This is my true story. I gave my life to my wife, trusting her with everything I had. I trusted my boss too, because he was not just a leader at work, but someone I respected like family. But I never expected betrayal to come from both of them at once. What I discovered broke me, yet it also gave me the strength to rise again. I didn't fight with words, I exposed them with proof. Before I tell you what happened, comment where you're watching from and subscribe so my story can reach more people. In my younger years, I gave everything to two places: my home and my job. I worked long shifts, leaving before the sun rose and often coming back after it had already set. My body was tired most nights, but my heart was proud because I believed all of it had a purpose. Every drop of sweat, every hour of labor, was for the life I wanted to build with my wife. I thought hard work was the answer to everything. I thought if I stayed loyal to my job and loyal to her, life would reward me in return. I believed success would come slowly but surely, earned through effort and sacrifice, not through shortcuts or tricks. At work, I looked up to my boss. He was older, experienced, and seemed like the kind of man who had built his success the right way. I respected him deeply, almost like a mentor. When he gave me advice, I listened carefully. When he praised me, I felt proud, like I was moving forward. I never doubted his character, and I trusted him not only as a superior, but almost as a friend. I thought I was lucky to work under him, lucky to have someone guiding me. At home, I carried the same trust into my marriage. I believed my wife was proud of me. I thought she saw the sacrifices I made, the long hours I worked, the way I came home tired but still tried to sit with her, talk with her, and share my dreams with her. I wanted her to feel safe and proud standing beside me because everything I did was for us. She had food on the table, clothes she wanted, and the comfort of a steady home. None of it came easy, but I thought she valued the struggle because it was ours. There were nights when I would lie in bed, exhausted, and think about how far we had come together. We didn't have much in the beginning, but we built step by step. I never worried about loyalty because I thought love and respect were enough to keep us strong. She was my partner, and my boss was my guide. Those two relationships were the pillars of my life, the ones I leaned on, the ones I trusted. If anyone had asked me then, I would have said with confidence that I was a lucky man. I didn't realize that both pillars were already cracked. I didn't realize that the people I trusted most would be the ones to break me. At that time, all I knew was work, loyalty, sacrifice, and faith. I believed if I kept giving my best, both at home and at work, then both would stand strong. But what I didn't see was that while I was giving everything, they were already taking more than they should. I see it now as an old man with the clarity of hindsight. But back then, I was blind with dedication. My boss, who I respected, and my wife, who I loved, were already weaving betrayal behind my back. I was too focused on carrying the weight to notice who was adding stones to it, and that is why this story still hurts to tell, because it began not with anger, but with pure trust. The first cracks in what I thought was a strong life came quietly. At first, they were so small that I told myself I was only imagining them. I noticed my wife started paying more attention to how she looked whenever I mentioned work events. She would spend extra time in front of the mirror, choosing dresses she hadn't worn in years, putting on more perfume, and smiling in a way that felt practiced. When I asked why she cared so much, she would laugh it off and say she just wanted to look nice. I wanted to believe her, so I did. It wasn't just how she dressed. I noticed her eyes sparkled too much whenever my boss's name came up in conversation. If I said he praised my work, she smiled wider than usual. If I said he wanted me to stay late for a project, she encouraged me quickly, almost too quickly, as if she was happy for reasons that had nothing to do with my career. She asked about him more than before, what kind of man he was, how he treated people, what he liked. At first, I thought she was just being supportive, but as the questions piled up, a quiet unease began to grow inside me. Another change came with office functions. She used to dislike them. She would always complain about the long dinners, the boring speeches, and the way people pretended to be friends when they weren't. Suddenly, that changed. Now she insisted on attending. She asked about the next one before I even mentioned it. She dressed her best and made sure she sat near him, laughing at his jokes, even ones that weren't funny. I watched, trying to convince myself it was nothing. I told myself she was just trying to be a good wife, to support me in my career. I wanted so badly to believe that. I pushed aside my doubts because trust was all I knew. I had built my life on trust. Trust in my wife. Trust in my boss. Trust in the idea that hard work and loyalty could never be betrayed. I told myself I was overthinking, that I was tired from working long hours, that I was reading too much into simple things. But deep inside, I felt a shift. Something was no longer the same, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on ground that was slowly breaking beneath me. Looking back now, I realized those were the first cracks in the walls of my life. They were small, almost invisible, but they were there. And while I chose to ignore them, they grew wider with every passing day. I wanted to believe my wife loved me. I wanted to believe my boss respected me. But both of them were already proving me wrong. I just wasn't ready to see it yet. The night I discovered the truth is still burned into my memory. It was late, a night like many others. I had been working longer hours because of a big project, but that evening I finished earlier than expected. Instead of telling my wife I was coming home, I decided to surprise her. I thought maybe we could have dinner together, maybe laugh, maybe talk like we used to. I walked through the door with hope in my heart, but that hope was crushed before the night was over. When I entered the house, she wasn't in the living room. The lights were on, but the silence was strange. I called her name, but no answer came. I went upstairs, and that's when I saw her phone on the bed, unlocked. She must have left it there in a hurry. Normally, I never touched her phone. I believed trust meant respecting privacy. But something inside me told me to look. My hand shook as I picked it up, and within seconds, my world fell apart. Hidden in a folder were videos, recordings she must have thought were safe from me. I pressed play, and what I saw shattered me. There she was, the woman I had built my life with, in the arms of my boss. They weren't just together, they were mocking me, laughing at me in between their kisses and touches. My boss, the man I admired, the man I worked so hard for, had betrayed me in the deepest way. And my wife, the woman I gave everything to, had betrayed me too. The betrayal was double. It wasn't just my marriage that was destroyed, but my career too. This was the man I trusted to lead me, the man whose respect I worked so hard to earn. Now I realized his praise meant nothing. His advice meant nothing, because behind it all, he was laughing at me with my wife. The sting of that cut deeper than anything else I had ever felt. I dropped the phone on the bed and sat there in silence, unable to breathe, unable to think. For hours, I replayed the images in my mind. Her smile, his hands, their laughter. It haunted me. Every sacrifice I made, every hour I worked, every dream I built, suddenly felt like a cruel joke. I felt small, broken, like my entire life had been turned into a stage for their game. The trust I held onto so tightly was nothing more than a weapon they used against me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break everything in that room. But I didn't. Instead, I sat quietly, the phone still glowing with the videos. I knew in that moment my marriage was over. I knew my respect for my boss was gone forever. And I knew something inside me had changed. Love was dead. Trust was dead. What remained was the cold fire of revenge beginning to burn. After I saw those videos, I couldn't sleep for nights. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every single second of what I had seen. The silence of the night was heavy, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't escape. My wife would sleep beside me, pretending nothing was wrong, while I carried the truth alone. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind, how I could have trusted her so much, how I could have respected a man who was laughing at me behind my back. I thought about the years I had given her, every long shift at work, every overtime hour, every holiday I missed. Those were all sacrifices I made for us. I wanted her to have comfort. I wanted her to be proud of me. But now I realized she wasn't proud at all. She was bored. She was hungry for power, for status, for the kind of attention my boss gave her. My devotion wasn't enough. My loyalty, wasn't enough. She traded my love for his position. That truth made my heart feel like it was turning to stone. In those nights of silence, I also thought about my boss. I remembered how I once admired him, how I once thought he was a man of success and wisdom. I remembered the way he would pat me on the back, the way he would smile and say, "Good job." Now, every memory of him felt poisoned. He wasn't a mentor, he was a predator. He took what wasn't his, and he smiled while doing it. He didn't just betray me as an employee, he betrayed me as a man, as a human being who trusted him. There were moments when I wanted to confront them both immediately. I wanted to drag her out of bed, throw the videos in her face, and ask her why. I wanted to walk into his office and hit him across the desk. But every time that thought came, I stopped myself. Confrontation would only give them a chance to lie, to twist, to deny. They would cry, they would beg, they would manipulate. And maybe, just maybe, I would be weak enough to forgive. I couldn't let that happen. I knew I had to be smarter. So, I stayed silent. I acted normal, even when it broke me inside. I listened to her talk. I listened to him speak at work, and I pretended not to know. But deep inside, the fire was growing. I knew my silence was not weakness. It was preparation. They thought I was blind. They thought I was broken. But I was waiting. I was learning how to use their own betrayal against them. During this time, I started to look at her differently. Every smile she gave me felt fake. Every touch felt like poison. I would watch her laugh at something on her phone, and I would wonder if it was him. My heart no longer saw her as my wife. She was just a stranger in my house, a stranger who had used my trust to climb higher, a stranger who thought I would never find out. But I had, and she had no idea what was coming. I also began to realize something important about myself. For years, I had been quiet, obedient, devoted. I thought being a good man meant carrying burdens silently. But now, I saw that silence could also be strength. By saying nothing, I was holding the power. She thought she had the upper hand, but she didn't know I had the truth in my hands. Truth is heavier than lies, and when the right time comes, it crushes everything built on deception. Every day I carried that folder of videos in my mind. I thought about what to do with it, how to use it, when to reveal it. I decided my revenge would not be loud, it would not be messy, it would be cold, calculated, final. I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't beg. I would expose them both with the very proof they created. They had recorded their own downfall. All I had to do was show it to the right person. By the end of those silent weeks, my heart was no longer broken. It was hardened. The man they thought was weak was gone. In his place was someone patient, someone ready, someone who understood that betrayal can only be answered with truth. I didn't want to hurt them with my hands. I wanted to hurt them with reality. And reality was already on my side. After carrying the truth in silence for so long, I finally reached the point where I had to act. I could not live my life just holding on to anger and pain. I had to make a decision about what to do with the videos, what to do with the betrayal, and what to do with the two people who had destroyed everything I once believed in. Sitting at the table late one night, with only the dim light of the lamp shining, I made my choice. I would not confront them directly. I would not shout. I would not fight. I would not argue. I would destroy them in the same quiet way they had mocked me, in silence, but with power. I thought about the many ways I could respond. I could confront my wife, but she would cry and twist the story, blaming me for her choices. She would say I was old, boring, or weak, and that she needed something more. She would play the victim, and maybe some people would believe her. I could confront my boss, but he had money, influence, and authority. He would laugh at me, deny everything, and call me jealous or bitter. But the one thing neither of them could fight against was proof. Proof doesn't lie. Proof doesn't need explanation. Proof cuts through every excuse and every story. And I had proof stronger than words. I had videos. The more I thought, the clearer it became. The right person to see this proof was not my wife, not my boss, and not even me. It was his wife. The woman who had trusted him just like I had trusted my wife. The woman who believed in him, who stood by him, who probably never imagined he was sneaking around with another man's wife. She was like me, blind, loyal, and betrayed. She deserved to know the truth. She deserved to see what I had seen. And when she saw it, their entire world would collapse. So I decided, I would not waste my breath on liars. I would not give them the chance to twist the story. I would go straight to the one person whose anger would be louder, stronger, and more destructive than mine, his wife. I knew the truth would crush her, but it would also crush them. She would destroy him in ways I couldn't. She would strip him of the respect he wore like armor. She would show him what it meant to lose everything, and my wife, who thought she was climbing higher with him, would fall alongside him. The plan was simple, but it had to be perfect. I took the videos and saved them on a secure drive. I made copies, keeping them safe in case anyone tried to deny it later. I wrote down dates, times, and everything that proved their affair was not a mistake, but a repeated betrayal. Every detail was clear, every piece of evidence sharp. This was not going to be a story they could run from. It was going to be a wall of truth, and they were going to smash against it. I thought about the timing, too. Timing was everything. If I exposed them too early, they might try to save themselves. If I waited too long, I might lose my chance. So I chose a moment when everything looked perfect for them. They were comfortable, arrogant, sure of their power. That was when the fall would hurt most. That was when their laughter would turn to silence. That night, as I sat there with the evidence ready, I felt calm for the first time in months. It was strange. My heart wasn't racing, my hands weren't shaking. Instead, I felt steady. I knew what I had to do, and I knew it was the right thing. This wasn't about anger anymore. It wasn't about shouting or violence. It was about justice. It was about making sure they paid for what they had done in a way they could never escape. I also thought about myself. For years, I had been the man who gave everything, who worked quietly, who trusted too much. But now, I was someone different. I was no longer the fool. I was the one holding the final card. They thought they had me cornered, but they had forgotten one thing. Liars always leave evidence behind, and I was the one who found it. In that moment, I realized something important. Betrayal doesn't end you unless you let it. Sometimes, betrayal becomes the weapon you use to take back your life. So I made the decision. I would not forgive. I would not forget. I would strike in silence, and when I did, they would both lose everything. My wife would lose the man she thought was her way to a better life. My boss would lose the respect he had built for years, and together they would lose the false image they carried in front of the world. All because I had chosen not to react with noise, but with truth. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and for the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt peace. I knew exactly what I was going to do. The decision was made, and once it was done, there would be no turning back. They had written their own downfall, and I was going to deliver it. The next step was to deliver the truth. I had made my decision, and there was no turning back now. The evidence was in my hands, the videos were ready, and the only question left was how to make sure the truth reached the right eyes. I knew I had to be careful, precise, and deliberate. This was not something to rush or handle recklessly. If I made a mistake, they could deny, they could twist, and maybe even escape. But if I did it right, they would be trapped by their own actions, unable to run from what they had done. I thought about different ways to expose them. I could stand up in public, at work, or even in front of family and play the videos, but that would create a storm I couldn't control. Too many people, too much noise, and maybe even people thinking I was just bitter or trying to ruin lives for no reason. I didn't want noise. I wanted silence that carried weight. I wanted a quiet blow that would cut deeper than shouting ever could. And the one person who could make that blow land perfectly was his wife. So I prepared carefully. I sat at my desk late at night when the house was quiet and my wife thought I was asleep. I turned on my old computer, plugged in the drive, and went through every video one more time. Each second of betrayal played on the screen, her laughter with him, his voice calling her by her name, their hands, their faces, their bodies together. It was disgusting, but it was also my weapon. I saved each file, labeled them with the dates, and put them all in one folder. I named it simply Truth. That word was enough. Next, I opened my email. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. This wasn't just sending a message. This was pressing a button that would destroy 2 lives. But I reminded myself, they destroyed themselves. I was only showing it. They were the ones who betrayed, who mocked, who thought I would never find out. This wasn't me being cruel. This was me being just. With that thought, I typed her email address. I had seen it before, saved from holiday cards they once sent us. In the subject line I wrote, "You deserve to know." That was all. No long words, no dramatic lines, just the truth. Inside the email, I didn't write paragraphs. I didn't explain. I didn't insult. I didn't beg. I wrote one simple sentence. "These are the videos of your husband and my wife." That was all. No more. No less. Then I attached the folder named Truth. My hands were steady as I clicked. For a long moment, I stared at the screen. My finger hovered over the send button. My heart was calm, my breathing steady. I knew this was the moment that would change everything. Once I pressed it, there would be no undoing it. But I also knew it had to be done. If I kept quiet, I would stay the fool. If I exposed it, they would finally feel what they made me feel. I took a breath, and then I clicked send. The email flew out into the night. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. For the first time in a long time, I felt like the weight on my chest had lifted. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I didn't throw things or fight. I had simply pressed one button. Yet that one button carried more power than anything I had ever said to them. The truth was now out of my hands and into hers. I imagined her face when she opened it. At first, confusion, then shock, then heartbreak. Her world would collapse the same way mine had collapsed when I first discovered it. But unlike me, she would not stay quiet. She would not protect him. She would not let him walk away. She would tear him apart. And in doing so, she would tear apart my wife as well. That was justice. That was the balance of betrayal. I shut down the computer, hid the drive in a safe place, and went to bed. My wife was asleep, unaware of the storm coming her way. She thought she had won. She thought her secret was safe. But I lay down beside her, knowing the truth was already racing through the wires, already sitting in someone else's inbox, waiting to explode. She was sleeping peacefully, and I almost smiled. She had no idea that the ground under her was already gone. The hours passed slowly that night. Every creak of the house, every sound in the street felt louder, but I stayed calm. I wasn't nervous anymore. I had done my part. Now, I only had to wait. The truth had been delivered, and it was only a matter of time before the fallout began. For years, I had been the quiet husband, the loyal man, the one who endured. Now, I was the one holding the strings, and they were about to dance to a tune they didn't expect. By morning, I checked the email again. It had been delivered. No bounce, no error. It was in her hands. My heart beat steady as I realized the game had shifted completely. They thought I was powerless, but I had struck them in the one place they could never recover from, their lies. They had built everything on lies, and now I had placed the truth in the hands of the one person who would never forgive them. Their fate was sealed, and I didn't need to do anything more. That was the delivery. Quiet, simple, direct. No noise, no fight, no warning. Just proof. And with that, my part was done. The storm began faster than I thought. By the next afternoon, the quiet house that once mocked me with her laughter turned into a place of silence for her. She didn't know it yet, but the email I sent had already reached the one person who could bring her world down, his wife. I imagined the moment she opened it. At first, confusion when she saw my name, then her hands clicking, her eyes widening. Then the first video playing, the sight of her husband with my wife in a hotel room, their voices and movements leaving no space for denial. She didn't just read words, she saw it, she heard it. The betrayal was alive in front of her, and there was no escape. The calls started soon after. I didn't pick up the phone, but I heard it ringing over and over again. First, it was her phone. His wife must have confronted him right away. I could hear the tension in the air, even without listening. My wife answered one call, and I could hear her voice shaking in the next room. She said his name over and over, panicking, like a cornered animal. Her laughter, once so confident, was gone. She knew something had happened, but she didn't know yet that I was the one who pulled the trigger. That secret belonged to me alone, and I savored it quietly. By evening, the office was buzzing with whispers. I had a friend who still worked late shifts, and he told me what he heard. The boss walked in with a face pale as chalk, his wife having confronted him at home, shouting in front of their children. She had stormed into his office later, throwing the videos on his desk in front of staff. People had seen, people had heard. There was no hiding it anymore. His reputation, which he had built for years with smooth words and charm, collapsed in an instant. Colleagues didn't respect him now. They pitied him, mocked him, or despised him. The man who thought he was untouchable was crumbling. At home, my wife paced the living room. She made call after call, but many went unanswered. She tried to reach him, but he must have been dealing with his own war at home. I watched her from the doorway as she broke down, shouting at her phone, slamming it on the table. She looked lost, desperate, like someone who had fallen from a high place and didn't know where the ground was. For years, she thought she was smarter than me. She thought she could play me like a fool. Now she was the fool, exposed in a way she could never undo. The next morning, she didn't want to leave the house. Her phone kept ringing, but she ignored it. She looked at me with suspicion, as if she knew deep down I had something to do with it, but she couldn't prove it. I didn't say a word. I let the silence speak for me. She tried to ask me, her voice low, almost trembling. "Did you know?" I looked at her and didn't answer. That was enough. Her eyes dropped, and I saw shame crawl across her face. For the first time, she was the one who felt small, not me. Within days, the fallout spread wider. His wife told her family, her friends, and soon the videos had reached people far beyond what I expected. They circulated quietly, whispered about in corners, shown in secret on phones. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was public humiliation. My wife could no longer walk into a room with her head held high. She avoided gatherings, stopped answering calls, and closed the curtains as if the world outside was looking in. But the truth is, the world was looking in. Everyone now saw her for who she really was. The boss's wife filed for divorce immediately. She wasn't quiet about it either. She let everyone know why. She told the court. She told their neighbors. She told anyone who would listen. His career, once solid and respected, was shaken to its core. People didn't trust him anymore. Clients pulled away. Colleagues distanced themselves. He tried to carry on, but he was a broken man. His authority was gone, replaced with ridicule. His wife had been the backbone of his social image, and now she had ripped it out from under him. As for my wife, she tried to cling to me. She thought maybe if she showed regret, if she begged, I might forgive her. But she didn't realize forgiveness was never coming. I watched her cry, but I felt nothing. I had cried enough already, alone in silence, when I first discovered the videos. My tears were gone. Now it was her turn to feel the weight of loss. She had traded loyalty for ambition, love for greed, respect for humiliation, and she had lost it all. The family found out soon after. Her sisters called, furious at her. Her parents, once proud, couldn't even look at her. At gatherings, people whispered, avoided her, or looked at me with sympathy and her with disgust. I didn't need to say anything. The truth spoke for itself. Every look of disappointment she received was another knife cutting deeper than I ever could. She had destroyed herself, and I had only lit the match. I lived those days in silence, but it wasn't the silence of weakness anymore. It was the silence of strength. For the first time in years, I felt control. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I didn't hit or scream. I simply let the truth do its work, and it worked better than anything else ever could. The fallout wasn't one loud explosion. It was a series of waves, each one crashing harder than the last. First his wife, then his colleagues, then her family, then the world around them. Each wave stripped away more of their pride until nothing was left. And in the middle of it all, I stood calm. I didn't boast. I didn't reveal myself as the one who sent the email. I let them guess. I let them wonder. That was part of the punishment. Not knowing if it was me or someone else. But deep down, they knew. and that knowledge haunted them more than if I had shouted it from the rooftops. They had betrayed me together, and now they were falling apart together. That was how the fallout began. Quiet, swift, relentless. They thought their ambition would lift them higher, but it only made their fall harder, and I was there, standing on solid ground, watching them hit the bottom. The collapse came faster than even I imagined. It started like a crack in glass, small, almost hidden, but it spread until the whole window shattered. Within days, my boss, the man who once held power over me at work, became the talk of every hallway. The videos I sent had reached far beyond his wife's hands. Staff had seen them, friends had shared them. People whispered behind his back, then in front of his face. His polished suit no longer hid his shame. He walked into the office looking like a broken man, his shoulders hunched, his eyes avoiding contact. The authority he once commanded was gone. No one feared him anymore. No one respected him. His wife wasted no time in burning down whatever he thought he could salvage. She filed for divorce immediately. She told everyone why. She told the court, her friends, and even people who barely knew her. She wanted the world to see what kind of man he was. She showed the videos to those who doubted. He was left with no defense, no excuse, no shield. His career, built on trust and reputation, collapsed overnight. Clients pulled their contracts, colleagues avoided him. Even his superiors, men who once praised him, now distanced themselves. He wasn't just a man who cheated. He was a man exposed, and exposure is something you can never undo. At home, my wife lived through her own collapse. She couldn't leave the house without hearing whispers. She couldn't answer her phone without hearing anger or disappointment. Her own family turned against her. Her sisters refused to speak to her. Her parents, once proud of her, now told people they had no daughter. She walked through the rooms of our home like a ghost, her face pale, her eyes hollow. She tried to cling to me, begging for forgiveness, but I gave her none. I looked at her and saw the woman who had betrayed not just me, but the vows we once spoke. She wanted comfort, but I gave her silence. Neighbors began to notice too. In small towns and even in busy cities, word travels faster than fire. The woman who once carried herself with pride now walked with her head down. People whispered at grocery stores. Old friends crossed the street rather than greet her. She became a shadow of who she once pretended to be, and it was all because of her own choices. I didn't ruin her reputation. She ruined it with her actions. I only made sure the truth came to light. The collapse wasn't loud for me. It was steady, like watching a structure fall brick by brick. First, his marriage fell apart. Then, his career. Then, her family ties. Then, her friendships. Every piece of their false world broke under the weight of the truth. I didn't need to lift a finger. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't even need to tell my side of the story. The proof was stronger than any word I could say. There were nights when she cried in the bedroom, thinking I was asleep. I could hear her sobbing into her pillow, whispering apologies that meant nothing now. She thought regret would heal the wounds she caused, but regret doesn't rebuild trust. Regret doesn't erase betrayal. Regret doesn't bring back the years I gave her, the loyalty I gave her, the dignity she stole from me. Every tear she shed was her own punishment, and I let her drown in them. As for him, the boss, his fall was even worse. A man like him lives on respect. When respect is gone, he is nothing. He avoided meetings, skipped functions, and stopped showing his face in places he once dominated. His wife's divorce papers stripped him of more than his marriage. They stripped him of his home, his money, and his pride. Colleagues spoke about him in hushed tones, not out of respect, but out of pity. Some laughed behind his back. Others shook their heads, disappointed. His name became a warning, not a title of success. I remember sitting on the porch one evening, watching the sun go down and realizing how much had changed. Months earlier, I was the one broken, sitting in silence, hiding the weight of betrayal. Now, they were broken, and I was free. I didn't need revenge that was loud and violent. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to destroy their lives with my hands. I let the truth do it for me, and the truth is the most powerful weapon of all. The collapse of their world taught me something. When people build their lives on lies, those lies eventually rot the foundation. It doesn't matter how high they climb or how strong they look. One strike of truth, and everything falls. My wife thought she was clever. My boss thought he was powerful. But in the end, they were weak, and their weakness destroyed them. They fell not because of me, but because of their own choices. I only gave a push. Now, when I look back, I don't feel regret. I don't feel guilt. I feel peace. I lost a wife, but I gained my dignity back. I lost a job under a false mentor, but I freed myself from a man unworthy of respect. They thought they had me fooled. They thought I was blind. But I was patient, and patience allowed me to strike at the perfect time. Their collapse wasn't just their punishment, it was my justice. That was how their world collapsed. Not with one loud bang, but with the steady crumble of everything they built on lies, and I was there to see it all fall apart. When their world finally collapsed, mine began to rebuild. I didn't rebuild with noise or pride. I rebuilt with silence and careful steps. After years of humiliation, betrayal, and heartbreak, I finally had control over my own life again. My wife's tears no longer moved me. My boss's downfall no longer concerned me. I had watched them both crumble under the truth, and now it was my turn to walk away. Not as a victim, not as a broken old man, but as someone who took back his dignity. The escape didn't happen overnight. It started with small choices. I began gathering what little I needed, a bag with clothes, some savings I had hidden, and the papers that proved who I was. I left behind the heavy furniture, the pictures, the things that once held meaning, but now only reminded me of betrayal. I learned that freedom doesn't come from carrying everything. It comes from carrying only what matters. Every item I packed felt like a brick removed from the wall that once trapped me. My wife didn't see it coming. She thought I was still the quiet, broken man who would stay, no matter what. She believed her tears and her shame would tie me to her, that maybe guilt or old love would keep me in place. But I had already made my decision. I watched her try to rebuild connections, try to reach out to people who no longer trusted her. Each rejection she faced reminded me that I didn't need revenge anymore. The world itself was giving her justice. My escape wasn't about hurting her further. It was about saving myself. The day I left, the sky was quiet, and so was I. I woke before sunrise, packed the last of my things, and walked out the door. I didn't leave a note. I didn't slam the door. I didn't want one more word wasted on her. She had taken enough of my words, my years, my heart. She didn't deserve a goodbye. I closed the door softly behind me, like a man closing a chapter of his life forever. I didn't go far at first. I stayed in a small place outside town, somewhere simple, somewhere no one asked questions. The peace was strange at first. For years, I had lived in noise, arguments, lies, laughter that wasn't meant for me. Now, the silence was mine. And it didn't feel empty. It felt full of possibility. I could sit in a chair without waiting for insults. I could sleep without fearing betrayal. Freedom is a small thing, but once you taste it, you realize it is everything. Meanwhile, the chaos behind me grew worse. My wife's family wanted nothing to do with her. My boss lost his job, his wife, and his respect. They had destroyed themselves, and I didn't need to watch anymore. I heard bits of news here and there, but I didn't care to follow closely. Their lives were no longer my concern. The man who once felt broken in the garage, in the silence of betrayal, was gone. In his place stood a man who knew his worth again. The money I had left, the strength I still carried, was enough for me to live quietly. I didn't need wealth. I didn't need recognition. I only needed peace. I built a small life in that new place, free from their shadows. Some days were hard, but they were honest. And honest hardship is better than false comfort built on betrayal. Looking back, I realized that escape was the best revenge. I didn't stay to argue. I didn't stay to prove my point. I didn't stay to beg for answers. I disappeared, and in disappearing, I left them with nothing. They had each other, but even that crumbled under the weight of their lies. My wife lost her reputation. My boss lost his power. And I gained the only thing that mattered, my freedom. I never returned. I never looked back. The house, the memories, the betrayal. All of it stayed in the past where it belonged. My escape wasn't about running. It was about reclaiming myself. When you've been mocked, used, and broken, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away without a word. Silence can be louder than any scream, and mine was deafening. That was my escape. Quiet. Final. Free. Now, as an old man, I look back at everything not with anger, but with clarity. Time has a way of washing away the noise, the shouting, the tears, the lies. All of it fades like echoes. What remains are the lessons. I see now that betrayal is not just about what someone does to you. It is also about what you allow yourself to carry afterward. For a while, I carried humiliation like a heavy stone. I carried heartbreak like a chain. But when I chose to act, when I chose truth and silence as my weapons, I set those burdens down. I learned that loyalty means nothing to those who are hungry for power or pleasure. I gave my life to my wife, trusting her with everything I had. I gave my respect to my boss, believing he was a man of honor. Both of them betrayed me, not because I was weak, but because they were weak. Betrayal is not proof of your failure, it is proof of theirs. I carried that understanding with me into my later years, and it gave me peace. I realized that I was never the fool. They were the fools, thinking lies could last forever. People sometimes ask me if I regret what I did. Do I regret sending the videos? Do I regret exposing them? My answer is no. I regret nothing. If anything, I regret the years I stayed silent, believing love and respect would fix what was already broken. My silence only gave them more space to betray me. When I finally spoke with proof, with truth, it ended everything. Truth is painful, but it is also final. Lies can stretch for years, but one moment of truth cuts deeper than a lifetime of lies. My escape gave me a second life. A quieter life, yes, but one of dignity. I no longer lived under someone's shadow. I no longer questioned myself. I no longer wondered if I was enough. I had proven to myself that I was stronger than the betrayal that tried to destroy me. Strength is not in how loud you fight, but in how you rise after being broken. I rose, not with fists or shouts, but with silence and exposure. That was my justice. My wife's name is now spoken only with shame. My boss, once respected, is remembered as a man who lost everything because of greed and lies. They are the ones left with scars, not me. They destroyed themselves, and I only held up the mirror. Sometimes the best revenge is not to punish directly. The best revenge is to let people see who they really are, and then walk away while they drown in the truth. That is what I did, and that is why I sleep peacefully every night, even now. As I sit here, an old man, I know I lost a wife and a career, but I kept my dignity, and dignity is worth more than any title, any house, any false love. I tell this story not to relive the pain, but to remind anyone listening. Never let betrayal define you. Never let someone else's cruelty chain you. You have the power to break free. You have the power to expose lies. And sometimes, you have the power to walk away, leaving them in the ruins they built for themselves. Final thought. She climbed higher on lies. He built power on deceit. But I brought them both down with truth. In the end, truth was louder than their betrayal, and it gave me peace.